Welcome to the Permaculture Herbalism segment of the Elder Tree podcast. I'm your co-host, Taj Scicluna of Botanical Education, a botanical educator, bioregional herbalist, and awe seeker. My work advocates for bioregional herbalism, where the well-being of ecosystems is held in equal regard to that of individuals. Through this lens, I strive to weave connection between communities, both human and other than human, cultivating a deep and reciprocal practice of herbalism. In this series, I'll be speaking with progressive permaculturalists and regenerative farmers who are reimagining how we grow, relate to, and heal with plants. Together, we'll explore how we can integrate plants into our homes, gardens, and daily lives as allies in connection and resilience. Join us as we delve deep into the art and science of permaculture herbalism, a living, breathing design system rooted in care, creativity, and renewal.
So I am very excited this morning to be here today as a part of the Elder Tree team and to be with Tonielle Christensen, who has been a dedicated part of the Elder Tree podcast. So welcome, Tonielle.
Thank you, Taj. It's so exciting to have you here sharing this permaculture herbalism segment with me. We've had opportunity to interview you in the past, and it's been wonderful to learn your wisdom and now have you here as a presenter as well. So let's see where this fun episode goes, and I'm looking forward to all the ones in the near future.
Yeah, it's really thrilling to me to be part of something with herbal peers as well and to have that exchange going on. So I'm really, grateful and excited to be able to talk to you today about your own journey and actually ask you lots of questions that are relevant to me in my own permaculture journey as well. So I feel like we can really go some places.
For sure. Let's see what juicy things come out.
So I've been a fan for a while and listened to the podcast and everything that has been created. You're in more of a tropical sector. It's really interesting actually we'll see some of our differences because I'm temperate and you are tropical. And permaculture and herbalism is very, very different in both of these climates, although the principles are still the same. But before we get into some of those nitty gritties, I really just want to ask you a little bit about, before we go into your journey with everything, what within you and within your business and your passion for permaculture and herbalism is actually really moving in you at the moment and alive?
I'd say this podcast really keeps me in the expansion and thinking and learning sides of things. But I guess permaculture really is a way of life. And so once you start working with the herbs and the plants and having them in once I had them in my garden, it just is an extension of life. So what becomes relevant and alive is always what I'm seeing abundant in my garden and how I'm relating and interacting with that. And so it's always changing, but I think the constant is that um, whatever plants are expressing themselves in a really kind of abundant and noticeable way, because I'm always observing, obviously, but like at the moment, patchouli is just thriving in my garden, and so is what's andrographis. These are plants and goticola, like these are plants that self-seed and have become naturalized in my garden. They pop up and they look so much healthier and vibrant than other plants that I might be like tending and it's beyond actually the season, and or decaying because it's coming into the hot season, and all of my annuals and different plants that I'm kind of really trying to keep growing for whatever purpose of use. It's, I guess it's, to come back to your question, it's the relationship of the plants that I guess are wanting to
Mm.
be harvested and learnt about and brought into our life. So, and yeah, so I've got patchouli oil there right now. I guess, permaculture really was my entry point into the food side of things, of health and diet. And per- herbalism is not my specialty. I'm just a home learner. I don't have any skills or you know specific formal training, so I don't offer herbal um, services to people. It's more of a practice that I do for my own health and well-being and for my family. And I think that in itself has just been such a beautiful journey. But cacao right now, I've literally got in the process, the process of making chocolate from the
Mm.
cacao beans I just harvested and fermented. So now they're outside sun drying. And yeah, I
I
hope that
have
answers your
cacao
question.
and I have cacao, andrographis, and patchouli envy right now. Definitely not friends that I can
Right.
easily hear at all. Much like you might have some temperate envy.
I do. I do.
I,
Yeah.
I look, and I think that this is what's really important about herbalism. I think like local herbalism is very important to me, and localizing these practices as part of your everyday with family or with beloveds, because I feel like just like food systems, if we're going to actually make changes to the destruction that globalization is causing, then by actually engaging with plants at home or in your bioregion and in your locality, even if you don't have land access, I think is a huge step. It's subtle and might be humble, but it doesn't mean that it's ineffective and doesn't have uh, bigger, ripples out into the world as well.
Mm. Yeah, I'm a massive advocate for that. And actually, one of my roles over the last year before taking maternity leave is helping improve the localization of our food system in far north Queensland. It's pretty much at dire straits. It's really, really unfunctional having food move that far down the coast and then back up again. It's unsensical. But I think this, the podcast here and the conversation in the herbalism world too, is how do we build that resilience and localize our medicine systems as well? And, as much as I'm working in the food system and I can see the complexity and all the parts and the pieces and the money and the players, it's a really big systemic thing to change. However, if we all as individuals and within our communities took more responsibility to grow our own food and medicine, then we wouldn't be relying so much on the system to change, and we would be benefiting tenfold by not just us having access to these foods and plants, medicines ourselves, but what it means to our ecosystem. As you said, there's so much in terms of degradation to the globally. What we do in our local makes a huge difference, and that the bioregionalism, like coming into and actually having relationship with plants in our bioregion, that's evolved within our own climates, has is going to have a stronger sense of medicine and just the what happens to our bodies when we're using and cultivating and protecting the plants from our area. You just think if everyone was doing that in whatever location they are, then it would it would reduce so much more waste, and it
Mhm.
would make us all better stewards of the land around us.
Yeah, because not only is it more effective, usually medicinally, because the compounds will actually be stronger in the plants that are grown bioregionally, but it will also provide more habitat and nutrients and, shade and all of these kind of things for other beings and other than human. So by stewarding things that are within our locality and that grow actually really well. So for me, growing patchouli would be a fun project, but there might not be actually any other beings here that benefit nearly as much from patchouli as they would from something that actually grows quite easily within the ecosystem. And, you said something before that really struck me as well as, with what is moving in you now, when you start to learn, I think, even about like permaculture and food systems, and then you have the herbalism trickle in, and even if you're a home herbalist, you realize that things aren't necessarily reduced to subjects. And especially if you start thinking like an ecosystem, which permaculture really advocates and fosters within you, you start realizing that these subjects that we put, these boxes that we put things in, they are only for our own minds, and it's blurry, the lines between all of these things, because there's actually no lines. There's lines of there's threads of interconnectivity, but there's not these lines of separation between them. And so for me, when I started studying herbalism, I was already informed by permaculture. And herbalism wasn't just a subject to me. Like, I couldn't actually separate the um, the ecosystem from the herb anymore. I would think of it very, very broadly. It's not just a herb that is for a person. It's a herb that actually does so many things in the environment as well as for us. And that's thinking like an ecology.
It is. I love how you put that. And I kind of bring that back to my students as well, as there's ecosystem functions that these plants exist and are and contribute to. It's not just about the yield that we receive for whatever we want it and use it for. There's that, yeah, there's all of those connections. And I think that's a great, as you said, when you went into herbalism, you already had the permaculture kind of thinking and mindset. And I wonder if people had that grounding and then went into education and teaching or nursing or whatever it is that draws and is somebody's passion and livelihood, but they were approaching it through that ecosystem thinking, then I feel like the world would be very different, because we would have I guess the permaculture principles in many ways as guiding us to make decisions and how we create and get to an outcome in whatever aspect of life, um, in a more holistic thinking way.
Yeah, I think that for me, permaculture really helps me to guide my decision-making processes quite a lot within, not only within gardens, but just within my life. Even within my business, it makes me think about like the multiple functions of things and how we can use. A lot of the time, it's about thinking about how to use energy efficiently as well, and to not drain quote unquote resources. I don't like the term resources because I like to think about things as relationships rather than resources.
Mhm.
But making sure that we actually honor the energy that is in any system, you know. It's taken a long time to get that energy. It's taken a long time for things to evolve to this point, to generate mitochondria and APT and all of these kind of things. Like, energy is uh, quite sacred, in my opinion, and we need to be very mindful about how we use it, just like an ecosystem is usually mindful because there's hardly any waste.
Yep. Nature's already shown us.
Mm. Yeah, definitely. And look, so I'm really interested in also, and this might be quite basic for some people, but I think that it's a very important question as well, of what what you think the difference is between a permaculture system or a garden, a gardening system or an organic garden. And permaculture is much more than gardening, but I really just would love to hear from you with all of your experience, since I think you started your business or your first business in 2010, I believe. So you've been doing it for a while, and
Mm.
maybe this answer has changed for you over time as well. And I'm interested to know that.
Yeah, well, I think there's many aspects to it, but I guess I kind of entered into gardening and food production world initially through the lens of permaculture. So I didn't have that traditional horticulture or, well, I don't. Traditional is a funny word. The big ag horticulture, I should say. Um, I entered in this really nice way, but over the years, I've been able to attend many dysfunctional farms, and even a big eye opener for me was working in an organic farm and seeing how unpermaculture it was. And just because something is labeled as organic, they're using organic inputs that are being brought in, just like chemical fertilizers and herbicides. It's trucked in, and things are not laid out in the landscape to actually utilize the flow of water and sun, or the elements. So I guess, it was
Mm,
eye opening to see that there was wastage. Like, I contributed to pulling down an acre of passion fruit, because it had had its first harvest, and they're beautiful big passion fruits, but it all needs to be pulled down and replanted, even though a passion fruit vine will continue and can live for up to approximately 7 years in the tropics and continue to produce. And that would happen in a home garden. For them to sell them, they needed to be first class big ones, and they kind of get smaller over the years. So it was really eye-opening to see there's so much wastage and energy wastage, and then all these inputs and, just the layout of the land without any consideration
mm,
to, what works well with access, and having to travel so far to go and pick the papayas, which actually need to be picked regularly and observed because the birds will get them, or they turn, and it's like, shouldn't that be closer to the homestead? So for me, I think the
things we can
difference
forget
between
about.
permaculture and a permaculture herb garden and a non-permaculture herb garden would be the context firstly. So who is it for, who's designing it, who would be requiring, and that would inform perhaps the size and the need and what kind of plants go into it. So it's, tailored and specific to the intention and purpose of the person who's going to be, building a relationship with this garden. And then location is a big thing. So are we building a little herb spiral that's off in zone 1 directly outside the kitchen for, a young family or household? Or is it a community herb garden? And does it need to be in rows because we're actually producing certain types of medicine and it's easier for multiple people to harvest a lot of quantity? So those questions really define what that herb garden is going to look like. And then, of course, the input. So are we making compost and we're producing our own, soil, and harvesting our own chop and drop mulch, and finding available resources is another principle. Can we build it out of rocks that we've got here, or is there a multitude of bottles that my neighbor has that we could create edges with? And so it's seeking those, as you said before, the principles as decision making tools. Are we incorporating a diversity of plants here, so we're stacking all of the layers and giving it more of a wild field, so we're confusing the pests? And is that diversity making sense? am I growing things that are climate appropriate to the tropics, or am I trying to put temperate plants in here and dealing with pests and disasters because it's like a fish out of water? um,
Mm.
yeah, and then the yields, I guess, that principle of obtaining yield. There's medicinal plants that we can use in so many different ways. Are we making a tea garden? But can I use this calendula to make tea or a balm? Or am I going to pick it and put it in a vase for the medicine of the beauty of looking at it? Like, there's so many. Am I going to put this back into the earth as the compost to plant out my next garden? So looking at the yields of each plant and then expanding out on, their many purposes as well. And I think that's a little bit of an insight of the amount of thinking that goes
Yeah.
into. Yeah.
This is really funny because when I was doing a lot of permaculture designing in my business and consulting, one of the main things was that people they thought it was akin to horticulture or landscaping, and they didn't realize the amount of deep thought and consideration, and that's what the design is, and you have to actually think about so many different facets and consider those. And I don't think that it necessarily should be up to an individual, because sometimes we work better in teams because we can actually consider more with others. But it's very interesting what you're saying about the inputs, how you could be on an organic farm, but the inputs are, they're not well resourced, and it's kind of like, in a way, a dysfunctional system. And the way that I see it is very similar to the way, especially in so-called Australia, we many people practice herbalism or naturopathy, and I'm not shaming anyone for any good that they're also trying to do in the world. It's amazing. But it's very, very interesting, the systems that we are a part of, because sometimes within herbalism has been a little bit hijacked by the colonial medical industry, and now is very allopathic. So all of our inputs, there are a lot of medicines, like extracts, that come from labs, and we don't know where they're grown, and we don't really know the embodied energy costs, and we don't really think about those kind of inputs that are coming into our system in a way. And it's very, very similar for an organic garden versus a permaculture garden. So I often will be thinking, when I am with clients, I'll be trying to actually think of them as an ecosystem, and the broader ecosystem that they're a part of as well, rather than just reduced to one little vessel and then trying to feed inputs into them that might actually be causing ripple effects somewhere else. And it's a lot to think about as well. I don't think that any individual should have the burden of getting all of that right necessarily, but I think that it's part of the ongoing solution to be actually in deep consideration of these things collectively. Yeah.
Mm, I love that. And it is a lot for one person to consider. And I like, for me, I just have this like vision and dream where, people are living in community and they have their gardens and an extension of shared gardens, and that there is so much potential and value when people live within a flourishing ecosystem, that they can go out and pick the plant that calls to them for medicine, and that just becomes an extension of the way of life and everyone's way of being. So yes, this preventative health wording, like, why are we trying to prevent health? But it's more of that proactive health, herbalism, where we're just not actually getting to a place of acute disease because we're so connected and people have such a deeper relationship within the plants in their environment, that their intuition and their cultural and family information sharing becomes just a knowing of what plants do what, and open up to actually the plants teaching us what we don't already even know, to
Mm.
to to help us with our, maintaining health and well-being. And then I guess if things do become acute, we have that within our bioregion, and it becomes an extension, and we can solve our problems together on a more local space. But I really wanted to study herbalism, and I have quite a lot of friends who are herbalists and naturopaths, and they talked me out of it because of what you just said about just giving people herbs out of a bottle, and you have this wealth of knowledge and you know how to help people, but it's this it's yeah, it's less out of the garden. And I think that that's why the elder tree is being so it's such an interesting topic at the moment, because a lot of herbalists and naturopaths and permaculturalists are wanting to create their own medicine, and
Mm.
put the medicine back in the hands of people in a way where it's safe. Obviously, there's a lot of information, and it can be, herbs are powerful, and it could also be um, non-effective if people are taking things in the wrong way as well.
Yeah, and it can also, and this isn't to strike fear, but like herbs need to be respected as well, because they can be dangerous as well. And that's not to say that they shouldn't be used and shouldn't be made by in the hands of people and home herbalists and things like that. But this is one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about education, because
Yes.
education can go such a long way of bringing people out of the depths of fear, and
Mm.
especially fear around nature and a natural system. Like, it absolutely perplexes me that so many people are afraid to do what our ancestors did, which is why we're alive. And it's crazy to me, and that we've been so disconnected from those traditions that would actually, and the folklore as well, that usually would teach us how to interact with the land safely and respectfully as well. And I do think that we've really lost that, because we've got the science, and I love the science, and I love knowing, the science kind of tells us why, and I love
Mm.
the curiosity of knowing why, but it doesn't always tell us how to go about operating within the law of the landscape, and I think that that is desperately needed, and what people are very, very much craving as well.
Hmm. Yeah.
Mm, yeah.
Mhm.
You said also that permaculture, the context and the site. So one thing that I repeat quite a lot is how permaculture is context and site specific, and which is very hard, because especially having a permaculture business, and I wonder if you've found this yourself, people want answers, and usually want very, very simple ones, things that they can implement quite easily. And I understand we all need to start somewhere, and we need to, have it step by step. A lot of the time, people would ask me about certain plants or their property or certain things like that, and you get the classic permaculture response of "it depends."
Mhm.
And it depends so much because in a different context or within a different climate, certain things won't work the same. So, for example, we've mentioned the herb spiral before, a classic, and I
Mhm.
often will tell people that the herb spiral is a way of thinking. It's not just to be implemented everywhere, and that's permaculture. The thinking behind it is the permaculture. And I remember once I was hired to uh, create, people really wanted this herb spiral, and I was hired to create one in more of an arid, really Mediterranean region. And I was like, this isn't going to work, because it'll dry out too much, and the principles won't be the same. So I actually inverted the spiral, it went inwards, so there was like a pond in the middle, and then it started to kind of like drain in. So I started to think about, well, how can we actually collect and redirect the water that is here rather than dry it out. It's just kind of a small example of how the thinking is different depending on where you are, and also depending what people are going to use as well.
I love that. That is brilliant. Inverting, yeah. I went to Mexico last year, and living in the tropics, it's like we're mounding everything and we're trying to manage the water away from the plants, but give them just enough. And then you go to these dry, arid places, and they're planting the plants down in the ground, and they're channeling water into them as, I guess, inset pots. And again, same principle. We're catching and managing water, but we're doing it in two completely opposite ways. Yeah,
Yeah. Just
yeah,
thinking
and
about
and
the
and herb spirals only work on flat ground. They don't work on when you've got a slope. And yeah, I mean, it could be complex, but there are, once you have, I guess, your perma goggles on and you've um, kind of sat with all the principles a lot, and it takes time to practice and to see and learn and embody, but then it does become much clearer. And yes, when with the permaculture business, it's been a very insightful journey to realize, because there, like, how long is a piece of string? The context part is so important, and was what I realized after a short period of time is that it's actually not my garden that I'm designing, that I could, like, if it was my garden, I would do all of this and then some. It's bringing it back to the context of the people, and even helping them have a reality check, because they see all of these things. Oh, I want a herb spiral, and I want a banana circle, and I want all of these elements that are permaculture. But they have, in when you sit with them, realistically, they only have 1 to 3 hours a week in their lifestyle to maintain and look after their garden with a skill set of
Mm.
zero. So there's like, do you know how to compost and care for worms? That is like the first question. And this is like where to enter permaculture from. Start making your own compost and growing herbs, close to your house where you can observe them or whatever. But it needs to be something that is achievable. And yeah, I made those mistakes earlier on for sure, trying to get people to jump from where they were into the skill set that I had um, developed over years, and and expecting them to spend all weekend in the garden like we do. It's
Yeah. Yeah,
context
it's
is important.
interesting. I've had a few clients when I was designing, and I had a few clients that said we're moving from the city and wanted to be self-sufficient, which I don't really believe in self-sufficiency. That's a story for another time. But two people shouldn't have to do what a community once did.
Yeah.
It's too much. But they had these dreams, and then when I was designing for them, they were very adamant about producing as much as they could from this new land. And when I designed in a cellar, they asked me if it was necessary. And I was like, well, if you want to be self-sufficient, then yeah, it is very necessary, because you've got to think about the storage, and the storage is, just as important as the growing is, but people just would sometimes not realize, because I think a lot of the time it's also been really marketed, this self-sufficient lifestyle, and then some of the practicalities really get left out, and people have to think about, the nitty-gritties. People have to think about, literally, like, where does your waste go?
Mm.
Um, and where does, what about storage, and all of these things that aren't the thrilling parts to sometimes think about, but are the practical parts that you really, really need.
I don't know, a sexy cellar, I would be happy with that. That
I would,
excites
yeah,
me.
I love a sexy seller.
But it's also from the harvesting to the storage, like what happens in between that too. So it's like
Mhm.
it's a homesteading in a way. You're learning skills of preservation and all the different ways to preserve and how you're going to store it in the cellar. Um, it's a beautiful lifestyle and journey, but it's a dedication, and it's very different to relying on the system and living in a city and having, that
Yeah.
two different lifestyles. But you can bring permaculture into the city and create that there for yourself as
Mm.
well. But yeah, it's definitely a worthy journey to take. But I wouldn't say that it's easy. And there's all of the mistakes you make along the way to learn what you need to learn to get there, and then it becomes a way of life, and it is embodied.
And often you need the practical skill set
Mm.
as well. So one of the things that I started noticing when I was doing a lot of permaculture learning and training was that it would be teaching people to design, which is really, really great in the scope of thinking about things. But the practical skills were sometimes lacking because people don't know a lot of basic rural farm skills anymore. So, people don't know how to fix a fence. People don't know fencing. People don't
Mm.
know, about how to do like basic plumbing or irrigation or even like chopping wood and things like that. And that actually became more of my focus because I was like, oh no, it's these hands-on skills that we're actually really losing. They're becoming endangered,
Mm.
and I started to think about how sad that was and how disempowering it was for people as well. So I saw a lot of people, especially in the urban environments, that were losing those skills. And I came from a suburban background. I didn't even know how to light a fire, like literally from a match. Didn't know how to light a campfire till I was like 19. But wanted to advocate as well. I was like, okay, if I can do this, then anyone kind of can. But because I'm seeing so many people within the more urbanized landscapes losing these skills, I wonder also about your feelings and thoughts on land accessibility and how to approach this issue because you live, I'm pretty sure you're still living like off grid, 3 generations. Are you doing this? Um,
Yeah. Oh, I had a similar start to you. But yeah, I would say this place is semi off grid. Like at the moment, we have our fridge on mains. um, but we do live on the same property with Blake's parents. And
mm,
so we've got, yeah, the grandparents,
mm,
us, and our children all living together, which is beautiful. But we do also have a project in Koa, which is about 20 minutes from our place here in Kuranda. So from Jabberkai out to Bulwai country. And it's 60 acres in a different environment altogether. It's more bushland on the edge of rainforest, Din Din National Park. And we're doing it with community because,
mm,
as you said, self-sufficiency can only, we can achieve some things within our households, but it's way more fun, and it's a big job to be,
yeah,
community
fair enough.
self-sufficiency. Even that, I think, is, it's a huge thing. Bioregional, let's aim for bioregional self-sufficiency. And the
Yeah.
climates, even in our region, we've got ravens, so there's places that can grow apples. We can't do that in any of our places here. But then we've got full Daintree coastal durian country as well. So our bioregion has, because of the elevation, even though we're on a very similar um you know what's the word, climate, um on the tropical of Capricorn line, we have the same kind of sunlight hours, but we have the elevation creates different microclimates and soil types for growing different crops.
Mm,
So, um, but yeah, doing it in a community space, and that will definitely be off grid. There is,
mm.
no
Well, for a lot
services
of
out
people,
there.
for a lot of people, that's a little bit of a pipe dream now as well, because it's it's funny. It's like it, almost to live in a neo peasant kind of lifestyle has become more of a privilege, because a lot of people don't
Absolutely.
necessarily have access to land. And it's okay. So um, how do we look at certain cultures and certain timelines that have, lived in more poverty and without ownership of land, and how have they actually gone about these issues to be able to provide for themselves and their families as well? So one of the things that I am actually really interested in is for, herbalists, permaculturalists, gardeners alike, how do we actually sometimes bridge these gaps with the land accessibility issues that people are facing now?
Yeah. Yeah, community gardens are very helpful. I would love to see community shared food forestry. Our intention with our property is, sharing the resources in the sense of investing in the project together, time and energy and financially. But we want to open that up to community to come, people who want access to land to come and contribute to growing, to be part of that community self-sufficiency. At this point in time, we're pioneering, like we're just sorting access and water, and figuring out, the in the design phase, really, not just of the landscape design but of the social structures and the community design, so that it is safe and clear and easy for people to participate, and have agreements set and things like that, where, yeah, the land can be shared in a way that we all hold the same values and ethics, and then obviously have our personal ways of relating and bringing in all that creativity and everybody's needs and wants, and working together as a guild in a good way. But yeah, I guess the community governance is also equally a part of what
Mm,
we are defining at the same time as our, the
working with
physical
people.
landscape design. Yeah, working with people.
Yeah.
How do we
I
become a functional ecosystem together as humans?
often laugh about, like, I think that a lot of people get attracted to plants because they find the people side of things difficult, and then in order to keep those systems going, you actually need, it's a lot of it's coming down to community and the fractured sense of community that we have in the West here, and how that is degrading not only to our souls but degrading to our ecosystems and social structures as well. And
Mm.
I always say, like, give me a plan or a landscape any day to design. Well, that can be difficult, but I feel like we really need to learn. We need to learn to have healthy conflict. We need to learn how to govern systems and come up with agreements and things like that, because it's one of the only ways I feel like we're going to be able to access land for many people in the future, unless those that are more privileged also offer certain, like, parts of their land to community projects and things like this to people that actually can't access the same as those. Mm.
And we've had many a clients who have plenty of land, and they've all expressed how burnt out they are. Not all, I shouldn't say all, but the majority have a big vision, and they have land area and space, and they have not enough time and they want community. But then when it gets down to the nitty gritty of, okay, well, can you invite people on? People could, tiny house options. It's it really freaks people out, the community side of things. And um, it's definitely my edge, and it's something that I never thought that would become my role in permaculture. But uh, I just, it's once upon a time I would have thought it was really boring, setting up agreements and all of these kind of things, but now I find it's just such a integral link and part of it all that um, we need to be sovereign and responsible as a community and making decisions together and respectfully. And so with, I guess, war and family culture and the way of the West, where we become these solo families trying to make life happen, and it's obviously not working for many people. We've lost the skills of intergenerational living, and I think we're very lucky in the situation that we have here. And even prior to that, we've lived with extended family, but nonviolent communication is one of the key foundational needs that we've requested. Each person who joins the community has done the course and can bring that into the conversation. And we've set up our conflict resolution, and yeah, just these things are super important so that we can get on with doing all of the the
I,
creating together.
yeah, I read a study once, and it was actually a study in the US, but it was a study on looking at permaculture properties across the whole of North America, and it showed that it was 97% of permaculture projects failed within the first 4 years due to a lack of social cohesion.
Mm.
So it's a huge eye opener of, okay, well, you've got the land set up, but do you actually have the governance there to make this sustainable? And I think that one of the things that permaculture is really great at doing is trying to think into the future. This tree isn't going to stay the size of this tree. This tree is going to get
Mm.
big. Like we want these things to outlive us, and we want to think about generations to come. And so if we're not thinking about the people side of things, then we are not necessarily doing our job as stewards as well. Not that it's just up to us. And so one of the things that I think about in regards to you and what you do, you're an educator and you're also a mama,
Mm.
and your business is Earth Mumma. And so you're obviously a big believer, I think, in the fostering of the next generation within your personal family as well. And you run kids programs, and I'm keen to hear about the importance you feel that you're placing in the teaching of next generations and the outcomes that you think that could actually lead to.
Yeah, thank you. I love sharing on this topic. Answering, yeah, to what you said before about the urbanization and how we've lost these skills, that was a big intention with the Nature Kids program. It's a year long, and with so much love and energy. Samantha Jurgens and I, who's a dear sister of mine, who was one of my first students, and we just became friends and have continued this beautiful path together. We've done school holiday programs and different workshops, one days, and all the things. And when I've run 2 permaculture design courses and have with kids in tow, so it's been a family friendly. We've got the Nature Kids program for the whole time while the parents are also learning. And I think for people to know where the sun rises and the sun sets is a really important thing, to know the difference between east and west. Many adults, like I've had students that are grown adults that don't know where the sun rises from their house, where they wake up in the morning, and it's a shocking thing for them to realize that they're that disconnected from the elemental forces in their life. um, how to light a fire, how to observe the stars, which way does the water flow, how can I play with water, what do these different soil types do? There's just so much. And so that's what we set out to embed into it. And it's not just about, it's a different thing, because we're wanting to empower the mums or the parents, dads as well, or aunties or whoever, the adults, with this contextual, intellectual information and the how to implement and bring the kids along for the ride in a way that these lessons are learnt in a way of nature play. And so permaculture, the best way to learn anything really is in a creative and playful way. And so it's a course that people can cycle through year in, year out. It's got the foundational permaculture ways of, principles, decision making tools, how it actually applies in many different ways, but how to create your gardens and start basically in the homesteading home, and then extending out to community and connecting with them in some of the lessons and ways as well. But I guess the big part is, connecting people to their landscape and how they can nourish and grow, not just both ways, their environment, but also within themselves, their mindsets. You can utilize this for self-development and bringing in that health and well-being connection from their landscape and garden. I think that's a huge part. And, I started out designing as well, and implementing gardens for people. And that was fun and it's necessary, but it really came full circle to me to realize that education is actually a really the foundational part of it. And I have had examples where I've put in beautiful gardens for clients who have the money. Many doctors actually become our customers, our clients. They see the need for it. They've got the money to pay for somebody else to come in and install and do it. But without the understanding, I can give them a book and say, here, I've written this book about the tropical greens that you can grow, and then find out that they're still buying lettuce in plastic bags because they don't have the relationship with the plants in their garden. For me, I felt like that was a failure. And so I'm more driven to empower people to do it themselves and build the relationship and teach that to their children, and make that, well, not make it, but if people are receiving and enjoying that kind of lifestyle and getting what they want from it, then it's more likely that they're going to perpetuate and that become a cultural handover to the next generation and their children. But yeah, everything I do, like this project at COA, it is for the generations to come. We have set that up within our just the structures, the trusts and the family trusts who are beneficiaries of the land that we dedicated to an owl, the lesser sooty owl that greeted us on the property. So no one actually owns the property. It belongs to the Jillabaloo, lesser sooty owl, and we are all beneficiaries and stewards. And we set that up in that manner from the onset with that intention. So
Yeah, I think it's really important also just to think that think about we live in such a hyper individualized society, and it's it's designed like that, I think, on purpose as well. But to think about things outside of yourself is now almost a revolutionary act, to actually start to think about the animate forces that exist outside of you, and that you are offering your life and your lifetime to the greater whole, to something else, rather than it just being self-fulfilling. And of course, I'm not demonizing that sometimes we want to do things for ourselves. That's perfectly fine. But to actually, I feel like it's humbling, and it is way more rewarding when you can take a little bit of a step back and think, I'm giving my energy now for worlds to come that I don't even know will exist, and I don't even know what the outcome will be. But it's almost as though it's practicing hope almost. It's a practice of hope, because you're literally giving yourself over to something that you're unsure will actually take place. And I don't know, I think that there's something really, really beautiful about doing that, and very, very humbling, and almost like a spiritual practice.
I've definitely found my spirituality um, in nature and permaculture, and yeah, when I learned the concept of support species at my very first PDC, and these incredible plants that have so many ecosystem functions and are just so multifunctional and prepare for the next generation of plants coming through, or the pioneer species. I
Mm,
thought, yeah, that's me. I I want to be a support species, and
mm,
and for my energy to be something that gives back and helps build upon an easier or the right conditions for the next generation to come through. And just looking at the the sadness and the issues of the world, it's easy to go down the rabbit hole and to get caught up in the fear and the scarcity and all of the issues, because we don't want to look at it and then pretend it's not there. It's just a bypassing thing. But to look at it, feel it, acknowledge and understand that that's most likely by design as well, and who is the conductor of that design, and then redesign, like, what is the vision that I hold that I want to sit in the emotion of and put time and energy into, rather than sitting depressed on the couch or having these cyclical conversations about how shit the world is, and come back to a place of what can I do and what vision do I want to inspire and hold that is a much better design than the one that we're all consumers of, perhaps, and be a creator or a producer of something better. And I don't think I would have had that clarity or mindset had I not stepped into this journey. I was in, and I think if you've listened to my very first episode where I introduce myself and journey, I was in a place of depression, and my health was not very good when I found out about, and it was because I actually saw an East and Western herbalist doctor who sat with me for the first time in my life in my early 20s and did a proper consultation and a holistic overview of my life, and said, you need to eat better. That when opened up my world to the food systems, and then therefore, whoa, what is there, are there solutions to this, and then finding permaculture and just dedicating my life in that way, and then everything else that's opened up from there to the great privilege, as you said, to be where I
mm.
am today, to pioneer this amazing property and bring in community. Yeah, it's definitely living the
Garden,
dream.
definitely, yeah, that's wonderful. And I think that, gardens are, they're healing in and of
Mhm.
themselves, and it's one of the things that I really believe in as a herbalist. It's like, yeah, the I love learning about chemistry as well, so I love, yes, this is the compound that is in this plant, and it has these mechanisms of action, and that's how it works on the physiology of the body, and that's fascinating. And also, uh, it'll only go so far, I believe, if we're not actually going outside. And even I have to remind myself sometimes, because that I think we're so hell bent on productivity that it's really hard sometimes for us to take moments away. But it's never regrettable to spend some time planting some things, to go for a walk, to, you said before that you feel your spirituality in nature, and surely, surely everyone does, like, because I just can't really imagine being in a natural place and listening to the wind in the trees and having it not move through me. And I do think that it speaks volumes about how disconnected we are, because people can actually stand in forests and they see it more from an analytical point of view sometimes than actually a connective point of view. And
Mm.
I think that we we need both. But
Mm.
gardens, something happens to you when you're in them, and you watch old people. I love this. You watch old people that have been gardeners
Mm.
forever, They have a different philosophy about life a lot of the time, and they also usually are fairly mobile still, because they are always, pottering around the garden using their bodies. And I I really aspire to be an old gardener like that.
Me too. Yeah, I just had this memory come back as you said that, of my grandmother, who is a big inspiration to me. She always had turkeys and chickens and amazing food growing out of her garden, and just a beautiful garden, and she's so proud of it. And people would come over and she'd take them tours through the garden, and as a child we would always be out walking in the garden together. And when she had a brain tumor, and so I was nursing her until she passed, and there was a really big supermoon, and it was the last time that she was really actually capable of going outside, and was sitting in her garden in her wheelchair looking at the moon. And then she looked around and she said, wow. She'd forgotten, she'd forgotten lots of things, and but she said, wow, this garden is so beautiful. Whose garden is this? And it's just, I just cried, because it was like, this is your garden. You created all of this with your love and intention. And so, it was a beautiful thing when she passed, that my family could go out together in this process together to harvest all of the flowers to lay on her coffin. It wasn't
Oh,
flowers that came from the flower industry, and there's so much to say about that too. To Yeah, it was very wholesome, and um, maybe not the full intention of what she created that for, but the garden for her was healing, and it kept her so fit and
yeah.
so curious and proud and active in her life. And I wish that for everybody, even if you don't have that garden, that a neighbor has a garden, and there's community gardens, and there's ways
Mm.
to bring that into your life.
I feel like it's bringing. This is why I'm so interested in awe, the idea of awe, because it's about re-engaging with awe. And I feel like, if you're working with kids, you'll see a lot of that. But then as we get older, it's kind of, it's not seen as conducive to making a profit in our lives a lot of the time, and to like getting us somewhere. So we end up like losing a lot of the curiosity that you speak of, and I feel as though like gardens invoke a curiosity of like, oh my God, look at this bug. What is it doing? Oh, look how shiny it is. Oh, wow. What is that bird doing right now? And I have that all the time about the natural world. Like that curiosity has never actually left me. And it's a huge part of my teaching and education, is trying to reinvigorate that curiosity and awe in people. And it might seem like such a small or, superfluous a step, rather than going and, making compost or doing something with your hands. But I do really feel that if we reinvigorate curiosity, it it actually stems then towards innovation, and it also will foster a sense of like a deep protectiveness for our landscapes as well, because we start
Mm.
engaging with them, and we become protective of the bug or protective of the bird, or they become our relationships and around us, and we start to actually see everything as an animate world that we really want to look after. And I feel like a lot of kids see this,
They
and
do.
yeah, I want more of that in the world.
Yeah, it is so fulfilling to hang out with kids. They just, yeah, in the garden, they definitely bring back that awe and playfulness, and even adults, the inner child that comes out, and the memories that, we might conjure from something our grandparents did, or, the old neighbor next door. Like, it really does bring that the older generation and the younger ones together. And I think referring back to, you know, how you were saying, you know, Earth Mumma, and as a mum, you know, I've got now an 18-year-old and a 4-month-old and a 12-year-old in between. So I'm perpetually a mum, and I'll probably have grandparents soon. I just think children are incredible. And yeah, just, you know, my kids are so used to it now that they're just kind of like, you know, that they seem less interested in the garden, but then their school teachers will say, "Oh, you know, Nova taught me about this plant at school today," and so they, you know, they're learning through modeling. And so, you know, as adults, if we just start playing and, you know, step into this journey and take bite-sized pieces, and just, you know, we can't learn it all at once. It's if we're creating our culture, if we're redesigning our culture away from this very consumption based, individualized way of being, into the opposite of that, of relational and earth connection, and um, caring for people and caring for the earth. And it's, you know, like, if from a coaching perspective, we're changing our identity. We the behaviors and our environment all are changing. You know, with NLP, I learned about that, and it's like, wow, it's a big transition to change ourselves, and to, um, you know, if we fall in love with awe and with our environment, we're more likely to protect it, and we're just, our lifestyle is going to change if we are now spending more time hanging out with plants than sitting on a couch looking at the screen receiving information. Like, it's just a no-brainer. We completely rewire our brains by that simple act. And
Think
so, children,
so.
get them off the screen and give them more green. That's my
Yeah.
motto.
That's a good motto. Yeah, I think that it's a lot of the simple things are actually can be the most effective as well. So people, Bill Mollison actually said that, like, it's embarrassing how simple some of the solutions actually really are. And if we actually, we don't need extravagant change. It's one of the things that I really have felt in the last few years more so. There's so much stimulation out there, and we look for, in the West, we look for bigger and better and more. And I really think that a lot of it is to re-aliven subtlety and simple acts, and that actually can produce great change if we are willing to engage in that. Yeah,
Yeah.
amazing. So thank you so much for all of the incredible work that you're doing, Tonielle, in re-engaging people into that subtlety and that curiosity, and giving people more of a chance to become, educated and have practical skills in the world, which is very, very necessary in these times. It's been a
Mm.
joy to talk to you.
It's my pleasure, and there's never a dull moment. I'm literally this weekend doing wattle and daub with bamboo with 25 odd other people for a free workshop, just hanging out, playing with clay and bamboo, and building non-structural walls with recycled glass bottles, and making a beautiful cubby house.
Mm, fun. And I think that, it's about, having that community around and doing things with your hands. I
Mm.
do think that that is within our DNA,
Hmm.
very
All of
much
our
so.
hands are healing. Yeah,
Yeah. Is
powerful.
there anything else that you would like to share today before we end up finishing up or letting the audience know?
No, it's just been really fun to sort of explore these questions with you, and I feel really grateful that you are now part of the Elder Tree team, and helping me out in this segment, so I can slow my life down and be, you know, in maternity kind of halfway with my baby, and so, and bringing in your temperate skills. You know, it's really nice because I'm always speaking tropically, so I'm excited to listen to your episodes as well. And yeah, I think it's going to be a great duo, dynamic duo.
Definitely. Let's see what we can weave together. Thank you so much, Neil.
Thanks,
It's been
Taj.
And as a special bonus to this episode, you can receive 50% off Tonielle's Nature Kids Permaculture program. If this is something that you are interested in, you can unlock this and many other bonuses by becoming a patron. Thank you for joining me here on the Elder Tree. Please share this episode with someone you think may benefit from its narrative. The way we approach living systems can have profound impacts on environmental and social justice, so please remember that these acts of resilience, however small, are deeply necessary for the protection of our wild kin. Together, here at the Elder Tree, through these conversations and what we learn, we are working to cultivate change. You can unlock access to our treasure trove of wisdom by joining our Patreon, where we put medicine in the hands of the people. You can access this via the show notes and our website. Like, subscribe, and share however you can, as your support allows our vision to grow. You are the root system of the Elder Tree.